I had just moved to the new apartment complex in the hills outside the city, a quiet and forest-edged neighborhood called Glenridge Hollow. The area was known for its peaceful, tucked-away atmosphere and odd charm, almost like a postcard version of quaint and cozy. After my last breakup and a stressful job relocation, it was exactly what I needed. The unit was small, second floor, with creaky floorboards and an ancient furnace, but the view overlooked a tree-lined ravine, a sanctuary. I hadn't been there 2 weeks when the knock came one Thursday evening. It was soft, almost hesitant. When I opened the door, I found a woman about my age, early 30s, smiling with a kind of forced cheer. She introduced herself as Amelia, said she lived in Unit 5B just down the corridor. Her dark red hair was pinned up, but loose strands framed a pale face and eyes that stayed just a bit too wide. She was beautiful, in a classic way, but a little off, like a porcelain doll with one eye slightly misaligned. She told me a few of the neighbors were getting together that weekend. Just dinner and wine, she said. We like to welcome the new faces here. You'll love the group. Everyone's so lively. There was something clipped in the way she said it. Too scripted. Still, I nodded politely. I'd been craving company, and part of me didn't want to seem like the antisocial new tenant. She smiled, sharp and sudden, and placed a small ivory card in my hand with just an address and a time, 8 p.m., Saturday. The whole exchange left me a little cold, but I figured it was just the awkwardness of new social encounters. I put the card on my fridge with a magnet shaped like a sun and promptly forgot about it until Saturday arrived. The building grew quiet by evening. The wind picked up, rustling leaves just outside my window, and I realized it was nearly 7:45. I hesitated. Something in me didn't want to go. I couldn't explain it. The hallway was unusually still when I stepped out, save for the soft hum of the lights overhead. On my way down, I noticed that most of the doors were shut tight, no sign of any other visitors heading in the same direction. 5 was at the end of the hallway. I could hear faint jazz music from behind the door and what sounded like laughter. But it wasn't just laughter, it was layered. Too many voices, too similar. Almost like the same person laughing on loop. When I knocked, it stopped. Amelia opened the door with a slow, practiced ease. She was already holding a glass of red wine in one hand and gestured for me to come in. Inside, the apartment was decorated in a cozy, eclectic way. Velvet chairs, vintage lamps, oil paintings that looked far older than the building itself. A group of 5 people sat around a long wooden table in the center of the living room, all turning their heads at once to greet me with smiles that didn't quite meet their eyes. Everyone. This is... Amelia turned to me, realizing she hadn't asked my name. I supplied it. She repeated it like a soft chant. Perfect. We've been waiting. They all said hello at once, at exactly the same time. Same tone, same rhythm. I forced a laugh and chalked it up to a weird coincidence, but my skin prickled. Amelia ushered me to a seat next to a man named Glenn, who looked like he stepped out of a 1950s Sears catalog. Pressed sweater vest, side-parted hair, spotless shoes. He introduced himself with an eager hand and an unsettling grip that lasted a second too long. Dinner began almost immediately, a candlelit spread of roast chicken, potatoes, and wine. The others, Marla, June, Ben, and Glenn, talked as though they had known each other forever, and each one made sure to mention how much they loved being here and how they never wanted to leave. I picked at my food. My stomach had nodded before I even took a bite. Where did you live before here? June asked, leaning forward like a predator studying prey. I told them a bit about my old city and how I'd moved here to start over. They nodded in unison. That's what we all did, Ben said softly. We all came here broken, Amelia added, voice almost a whisper. But Glenridge fixes you. The lights flickered. I blinked, startled. No one else reacted. I tried to brush it off, telling myself this was just quirky small-town weirdness, exaggerated by isolation and unfamiliar faces. But when I looked back at the group, all 5 of them were staring. Not at me. Behind me. I turned around slowly. There was nothing there, and yet, I swear I felt something exhale at the nape of my neck. The laughter started again as soon as I turned back toward the table. It was sudden, too sudden, like a switch had flipped. The 5 of them were mid-chuckle, as if I just told a joke, though I hadn't said a word. Amelia stood and refilled everyone's wine glasses without asking. She didn't even look where she was pouring. Not one drop spilled. "So," Marla said, her voice sugary and strange, "tell us, have you made any other friends here?" I hesitated. "I haven't really met anyone else yet." Their eyes flicked to each other. The atmosphere in the room thickened, like the air was syrup. Something unseen pressed against my temples. "No one else ever stays long," Glenn muttered, almost to himself. Amelia shot him a warning look, then turned her smile back on me. "That's why we like to get to you early, before the city pulls you back." I let out a nervous laugh and reached for my wine, more to fill the silence than anything else. But the wine was oddly sweet. Too sweet. The aftertaste reminded me of something bitter, metallic. Across the room I noticed a door, probably a bedroom, but it was slightly ajar, and beyond it was only darkness. Pure black. Like the lights were off. But not even a sliver of light from the dining area reached in. It was a darkness that swallowed everything. I kept glancing at it during dinner. At some point, I noticed the shadows inside the room shift, as if someone or something was pacing just beyond the doorway. No one else seemed to notice. I leaned toward Amelia. "Do you mind if I use your bathroom?" She beamed. "Of course. Down the hall, past the painting." The painting she referred to was huge, nearly floor to ceiling. An oil portrait of 6 people standing together in a field. 5 of them looked exactly like the people at the dinner table, just younger, in older clothing. The 6th figure had been scraped off the canvas. Not faded, scraped. The void where their face once was had left a violent gash in the painting. I stared at it too long. I could feel the space behind my eyes tighten, like the image was doing something to my head. The bathroom was immaculate, pristine even, but the mirror was fogged over. Not steamed. Fogged. As if the mirror was behind a sheet of glass, and something was breathing from within it. I wiped it with a towel and stared at myself. Except, it wasn't quite me. My reflection was smiling when I wasn't. Not a big grin, just a tiny twitch at the corners of my mouth. I leaned closer. It mirrored me now. I stepped back fast. There was a sudden knock at the door. A single rap. "Everything okay in there?" Amelia's voice was sweet, but tightly controlled. "Yeah," I called back, just washing my hands. When I returned to the table, I noticed the others had set down their forks, wine untouched, and were watching me. Glenn spoke slowly. "We were just saying, it's strange how people move in here, and forget to leave." I tried to smile. "Well, I've signed a 1-year lease, so I guess I'm stuck with you all for a while." The whole group burst into laughter, except it wasn't warm or natural. It came all at once, in unison again, like a recorded track playing from different mouths. Then silence. Ben's eyes bore into mine. No one ever makes it a year. Something shifted in the walls, as if the apartment itself exhaled. I stood up. "Thank you for dinner. It was lovely, but I think I should head back. I'm still unpacking." Amelia tilted her head, smile tight. "Of course. But do stay close, won't you? Glenridge Hollow is safest with friends." I left as politely as I could. As soon as the door shut behind me, my legs carried me fast down the corridor. The silence was too clean. Not even the creak of floorboards. Back in my apartment, I double-locked the door. My hands shook as I poured myself a fresh glass of water, needing to shake the fog from the wine, the stairs, the shadows. I told myself it was just an awkward dinner, that the people were odd but harmless. I went to bed by 10, but I didn't sleep, because around 2 a.m. I heard someone laugh outside my door. Not footsteps, not talking, just a single sharp, too loud laugh from someone standing inches away on the other side. And then the doorknob twitched. I froze in bed, breath locked in my chest. The doorknob rattled again, just slightly, as if someone was testing it gently. The laugh still echoed faintly in my ears, too high-pitched to be Glenn's, too drawn out to be a joke. I clutched my phone beneath the blanket and stared at the door from across the room, heart pounding so loudly I thought whoever was outside might hear it. But the door never opened. The knob stopped moving. Silence fell again, the kind that hummed in your ears like pressure. I didn't sleep after that. I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the building, the soft hiss of the radiator, the occasional drip from the kitchen faucet. But no more sounds came from the hallway. By the time the sun rose, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe the knob had twitched from temperature change. Maybe I'd dreamed the laugh. Sleep deprivation and anxiety could mess with your senses. That's what I kept repeating as I poured myself coffee with shaking hands and stared at the front door. Later that day, I saw Amelia again, this time near the communal mailboxes in the front lobby. She was smiling like nothing strange had happened. "Hey, they're beautiful," she said with practiced warmth. "Did you sleep well after dinner?" I tried to keep my tone light. "I think someone might have knocked on my door last night." Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, probably just one of the neighbors. People can get restless at night around here." Restless. She didn't explain, just took her mail and walked out into the foggy courtyard without another word. I noticed she wasn't wearing a coat, even though it was unusually cold that morning. Her breath didn't fog in the air. I told myself to stop overthinking. Maybe everyone in the building was just weird. A little too quirky. Creepy, sure, but nothing criminal. I still had work to focus on and a life to rebuild. That evening, I pushed myself to unpack more boxes and set up my home office. I put on some soft music, lit a candle, and tried to ground myself. Around 10:30, I was brushing my teeth when I heard it again. Laughter. But this time, it was inside. Muffled, but not from the hallway. From beneath me. I paused, toothbrush still in my mouth, and listened closely. There it was again. A low, distorted giggle. Like someone trying not to laugh too loud under the floorboards. My apartment didn't have a basement. I checked during the move-in process. Just the subfloor and support beams, maybe a crawl space, but nothing large enough for people. I stepped cautiously around the bathroom, placing my ear close to the tile. The laughter came and went in short bursts, always moving, like it was crawling just under the foundation, weaving between rooms. I followed it to the living room, knelt down, pressed my palm to the hardwood. For a moment, there was nothing. And then, a thump, right beneath where I knelt, like someone had slammed a fist into the wood. I jumped back and scrambled onto the couch. For half an hour, I sat motionless, watching the floor, but the sounds didn't return. Finally, I turned all the lights on and made a bed on the couch, too afraid to sleep in the bedroom. Even then, I kept one eye on the hallway, half expecting the knob to turn again. I made it through the night. The next morning, I marched down to the leasing office, determined to ask if the other tenants had complained about strange noises. But the manager, a woman named Karen, looked at me with wide, tight eyes as soon as I brought it up. "You had dinner with the people in 5D?" she asked, almost whispering. I nodded slowly. Her mouth opened, then shut again. She licked her lips. I thought they moved out last year." "What?" She blinked at me. "No one's supposed to be living there. That unit's condemned. Gas leak or mold issue, I don't know the details. It's been locked up for months." I told her I'd been there, ate dinner, saw them. Karen looked sick. She stood, grabbed a ring of keys, and motioned for me to follow her. We climbed to the 5th floor together, sat the elevator humming too slowly between levels. At the end of the hall, Karen stopped in front of 5D and turned the key in the lock. The door creaked open, and the apartment was completely empty. No furniture, no table, no lights, just dust and old wallpaper peeling at the corners. The windows were boarded from the inside. I stepped over the threshold cautiously. The air was thick and sour, like something had died long ago and refused to leave. "I swear to God," I whispered. There was a dinner table. Wine. People. Karen stepped back. "You need to leave that unit alone." Before I could respond, she turned and walked away quickly, leaving me standing alone inside the hollow shell of what I knew had been full of people just 2 nights before. I left and closed the door behind me. But as I did, I caught a sound again. Laughter. Faint. From inside the walls. And this time it was my voice laughing with them. That laugh, it wasn't just similar to mine. It was exactly my voice, pitch and all, cackling somewhere deep within the walls. The sound slithered around me, like it was trying to remind me that I was already part of their game. That maybe I'd never left the table. I ran back to my unit, double-locked the door, pulled a chair beneath the knob. I didn't stop shaking until my back was against the farthest wall. Every light in the apartment switched on. I told myself I was imagining things. That stress, isolation, and poor sleep were blurring my grip on reality. But it wasn't true. Something was wrong with Glenridge. Really wrong. Over the next 2 days, I barely left my unit. Every now and then, I'd hear footsteps in the hall or the faint flicker of laughter. Never too close, but just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. And at night, it always got worse. I'd hear scratching beneath the floorboards, whispering under the faucet, a voice calling my name in the rhythm of a creaking cabinet hinge. By day 3, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove downtown to the public records office. If something was going on in Glenridge Hollow, I wanted to know what. I requested any public incident reports, building history, deaths, or disappearances. The woman at the front desk, an older lady with heavy eyeliner and a fox brooch on her cardigan, gave me a strange look when I gave the address. "You're staying at Glenridge?" I nodded. She sucked her teeth. We used to get a lot of complaints about that place. Police were called there more than once in the 90s. Mostly noise and disturbances, weird behavior, but then it just stopped. No calls, no complaints, no nothing. Tenants just disappeared off the record. She slid a box across the counter to me and tapped the top. "Start with this." The file folder inside was dusty and yellowed with age. I skimmed through faded documents, lease agreements, maintenance records, and one old newspaper clipping that stopped me cold. It was dated June 13th, 1996. Churro, 6 residents found dead in Glenridge Hollow dining room. No signs of forced entry. Police report group was seated mid-meal. All 6 appeared to have died within minutes of each other. Official cause, carbon monoxide poisoning. Neighbors reported laughter the night before, but no one recalls seeing them afterward. I recognized their names. Glenn, Marla, Amelia, Ben, June, and one more, Isabel Pryor, the 6th. There was a grainy black and white photo, all 6 smiling, heads tilted toward each other, seated around a table. And behind them, faint but visible, was a painting on the wall. The same oil painting I saw in the hallway of 5D, the one with the face scraped out. I drove home with my hands gripping the wheel tight, barely blinking, mind racing. Back at the apartment, I didn't go inside immediately. I parked in the back lot and sat there, trying to calm my breath. That's when I saw someone walking near the edge of the trees just beyond the parking lot. It was Amelia. She was barefoot, wearing the same dress from the dinner party, moving slowly between the pines like she wasn't touching the ground. Her hair floated around her face, though there was no wind. And then she looked up. Her eyes locked with mine, even from that distance. She smiled wide and crooked, and I swear I saw my own teeth inside her mouth. I fumbled for my phone, trying to take a picture, anything. But by the time I held it up, she was gone. That night, I packed a small bag and slept in my car. I couldn't stay in that apartment another night. But even then, parked at a gas station miles away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd taken something with me. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the radio turning on by itself. Static filled the car, and over the hum, I heard a distorted whisper. "You laughed with us. You remember now, don't you?" I turned off the car, slammed the doors, drove. I didn't stop until sunrise. I spent the next day in a cheap motel, an hour away from Glenridge Hollow. I barely slept, only closed my eyes in spurts, waking every time I thought I heard someone say my name. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see my own reflection smiling when I wasn't. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to move out. No more second chances. No more rationalizing. I didn't care about the lease or the deposit or my pride. I'd pack what I could in one day and get out. I drove back to the apartment around 8 a.m., hoping no one or nothing would be awake. The building looked different in daylight. Smaller, grayer, like its paint had faded overnight. The vines along the sides were blackened. The mailbox area was littered with envelopes that hadn't been picked up in weeks. And the windows? Many were dark, boarded. Was anyone else really living here? I took the stairs 2 at a time, eyes on the floor, keys already in my hand. As I reached my unit, I noticed something strange. A sheet of paper had been slipped under my door. It was folded once, clean and crisp. I picked it up cautiously. There were only 4 words, handwritten in charcoal black ink. "Your seat is waiting." My stomach dropped. I shoved open the door and locked it behind me, heart slamming in my chest. I didn't bother checking the rooms. I just grabbed boxes and started throwing things together. Clothes, hard drives, the most important documents. The air in the apartment felt thick, humid, charged with static. It clung to my skin. I kept glancing toward the bathroom mirror, afraid to see someone else in it again. Then the walls started ticking. First, soft, then louder, like every inch of the drywall had synchronized to the rhythm of a giant invisible metronome. Tick, 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 tick. I covered my ears, and it was still there, like it was inside my skull. I dropped the box I was carrying and backed into the kitchen. My eyes landed on the oven clock. 8 p.m. No, that was impossible. It was still morning. Light streamed through the windows. My phone said 10:13 a.m. The oven kept ticking, the display flashing red now. 8 p.m. 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Then the lights flickered, and I heard footsteps in the hallway. That same synchronized pattern of pacing, stopping, pacing again. And then a knock. Not at the door, at the wall, just beside the painting I'd hung last week. 4 slow, deliberate knocks. I backed into the bathroom and locked myself in, clutching my phone, shaking. I opened my voice recorder app and started speaking softly, barely above a whisper, like I was afraid something else might hear me. This is me. I don't know what's happening, but I think something wants me to be part of it. I went to dinner with them and they weren't alive. They were never alive. Not anymore. And now they're in the walls. They're in the mirrors. They wear my face. If I disappear... The lights cut out. My phone screen blinked, and then I saw it. In the mirror behind me, there was someone standing in the hallway outside the bathroom, a pale silhouette, head tilted, grinning, and I wasn't smiling. I turned fast. No one there. But the bathroom door had unlocked. I didn't touch it. I know I didn't. I reached for my phone to call someone. Anyone. But every contact in my phone was gone, replaced by a single new name. Amelia. I dropped the phone like it burned me. When I picked it back up, the screen was black. And behind me, just faintly, I heard it again. That sing-song chorus of voices. You were the 6th. You were the laugh we lost. You came back to us. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake in the farthest corner of the apartment, heart in my throat, gripping a small flashlight like a weapon. I didn't even close my eyes. And sometime, just before dawn, I noticed something new. My front door was open. Wide open. And someone had set the table in the living room. Candles lit, 6 chairs around it, and in the center, a glass of red wine waiting. At my place. I didn't remember owning a dining table. And yet, there it was, exactly where my coffee table had been the night before. 6 ornate chairs around an old wooden surface, each place set with silverware that wasn't mine, folded napkins I didn't recognize, and plates made of thin porcelain etched with an unfamiliar crest. My own chair, the one closest to the kitchen, was pulled out slightly. Waiting. The wine glass at that place was still half full. I stood frozen in the hallway, just outside the kitchen light, watching the candle flames flicker gently, though there wasn't a breeze in the room. Something about the table felt old, not just antique, but ancient. As if it didn't belong in this world anymore, but had dragged itself across time just to be here. My first thought was to run. My second thought was, why was part of me calm? There was a familiarity in the way the table was arranged, a subtle sense that I'd been there before, that this table had been set in my name before I even moved into Glenridge. No, I whispered aloud, I'm not doing this. I turned, planning to grab my bag and leave everything behind. But the hallway stretched longer than it should have. I took 3 steps and realized the front door was no longer there. My apartment, my small, cramped 1-bedroom, had somehow grown deeper, darker, the walls longer and breathing, the floorboards humming beneath my feet. Then I heard the clinking of cutlery behind me. Someone was sitting down. I turned slowly. One of the chairs at the table was now occupied. Glenn, sweater vest perfect, napkin in his lap. Then another. Marla, her pearls too tight around her neck, her smile stiff as porcelain. Then June, Ben, Amelia, they appeared one by one, like they'd been painted into place. All that was left was the 6th seat. Mine. Amelia gestured to it gently, fingers curling with elegance. We saved it for you, dear. Ben grinned too wide. You were the one who brought us back. June giggled. We needed a memory, and you remembered. I don't understand, I whispered. Amelia tilted her head. You used to live here, years ago, long before your mind could hold it. You left something behind. Marla leaned forward, whispering, You left us. And then Glenn reached toward the table and unrolled a piece of paper. I squinted at it. It was a lease agreement. My name was at the top in perfect cursive, signed and dated. June 13th, 1996. The same day the 6 of them had been found dead. No, I said aloud. That's impossible. I wasn't even born yet. I'm not. Time here isn't what it is outside, Amelia whispered, eyes locked onto mine. You've come back to finish what was started. Suddenly, I remembered something. A dream I used to have as a child, over and over for years until I was 12. I'd be sitting at a long wooden table, candles flickering, people laughing around me. I'd raise a glass of red wine. I'd always wake before drinking it. I hadn't thought about it in a decade, until now. That same table, that same laugh. I stumbled back, eyes wide. I'm not one of you. Ben stood, his smile cracking at the corners of his mouth like paint peeling off canvas. Then why are you still here? I didn't ask to come back, I said, heart pounding. I didn't choose this. No one does, said Marla. But once you've dined with us, you belong. I turned to run, but the walls pulsed, melting into something else. Velvet curtains, candlelight. I was standing not in my apartment anymore, but in that dining room from the 1996 photo. The night of the deaths? The walls dripped. The air reeked of rot and old roses. They were closing in now, circling the table, their faces flickering between life and decay. One moment smiling, the next hollow-eyed and ashen-skinned. Amelia came forward, extending the wine glass. Finish what was begun. I stared at it. Something in me stirred. Not fear, but clarity. This wasn't about joining them. It was about remembering what I'd escaped, and why. I stared at the wine glass in Amelia's hand. My fingers itched to reach for it, but not out of thirst. Out of memory. Like I was retracing a step I had taken long ago in another version of myself. A child? A spirit? A ghost of my own past? They stood in a half circle around me, waiting. I could see it now, every detail of that long-forgotten night in 1996. The candles, the laughter, the clink of glasses. I saw myself, no older than 10, hidden beneath the table, knees pressed to my chest, trembling in silence. I remembered the adults around me. Their voices had been soft and warm at first, full of strange promises. We'll keep you safe forever. You'll never have to leave. No pain, no age, just joy. I had been an orphan, alone, dropped in Glenridge for reasons I never understood. Until now. I was the girl in the painting. The sixth who never drank the wine. The one who ran. And because I ran, the ritual failed. That's why they'd been trapped here all these years, waiting. You slipped through, Amelia said softly as if reading my thoughts. You were ours. And then you left. Her smile widened. But you came back. You remembered. No, I said, I escaped. That wasn't an accident. I wasn't lost. I was saved. Ben's face twisted into a scowl. You abandoned us. You were going to sacrifice me, I snapped. Not sacrifice, June whispered, her eyes glowing faintly. Join? I turned back to the table. The glass sat where Amelia had placed it. The liquid inside was darker than wine, thicker. It smelled like rust and earth, and beneath the table I could see the faintest shadow of a child, watching. My shadow. A moment frozen in time, replaying again and again. That's what Glenridge Hollow was. Not a home, not a haven, but a trap, a loop, feeding on the souls of the forgotten, pulling back those who got away. I stepped toward the chair. Their smiles widened. All 5 of them whispered in unison, "Welcome home." I sat down, hands flat on the table, heart pounding. And then I did something they didn't expect. I tipped the glass over. The liquid spilled across the table like blood, soaking the tablecloth, trailing toward the other place settings. Their faces contorted, not in anger, but fear. No, Amelia hissed. You must drink. I already did, I said, years ago, and I spit it out. The dining room trembled. Paint peeled from the walls in strips. The candles shrieked with blue flame. One by one, the others tried to reach for me, but their fingers burned on contact with the spilled drink. Their skin began to crack like old porcelain. Voices screeched in a chorus of rage. You were ours. You are ours. You can't leave again. But I stood. The chair behind me crumbled to ash. The table split down the center, vines growing from the cracks, curling with fury. Light poured from the walls, bright and golden, and for the first time in this nightmare, I saw something beautiful. A doorway. A glowing frame in the wall where the painting used to hang. Not a painting now. A portal. Home. Not just mine, but freedom. I ran. The walls clawed at me. Amelia screamed my name, her voice a banshee wail, but she couldn't cross the threshold. I threw myself through the doorway, and everything went silent. I awoke in the back of an ambulance. A woman stood above me, middle-aged, kind-eyed. She said her name was Detective Arlene Sawyer. I was found unconscious in my apartment. Neighbors reported the smell of gas. The whole building had been evacuated. I had been the only one inside. They said I was lucky, but I knew better. Glenridge Hollow had burned that night. A freak accident, they called it. Gas leak under Unit 5D. Emergency services found 6 charred chairs fused to a long wooden table in the ashes of what was once my floor. No bodies, just dust. They never found my lease in the office files. My name was never entered into the system. And the unit I lived in, it hadn't existed in their blueprints since 1996. The weeks that followed were a blur of questions, police interviews, psychological evaluations, and long, restless nights in temporary housing provided by the city. I told them I didn't remember much, that I thought I smelled something strange, passed out, and woke up in the ambulance. That's what they wanted to hear. No one asked about Amelia, or the others. And I didn't offer. I visited the site of Glenridge Hollow once, weeks later. The entire building had been torn down. All that remained was a fenced-off lot, blackened foundation, and a single charred tree near where the courtyard used to be. Some of the neighbors, people who'd lived in other buildings nearby, left flowers and candles at the gate. Most had stories. Most remembered strange things. I always heard music at night, one woman told me, like from an old gramophone. And laughter. Too much laughter. A man in a flannel jacket swore he once saw people dancing in the windows, but the building had been condemned for years. Just shadows, he muttered. All smiles. Always smiling. I kept to myself, smiled politely. Then left before anyone could see my hands shake. I moved again. New city, new job. A roommate this time. I didn't want to be alone anymore. The nightmares faded slowly, like bruises. But sometimes when the night's too quiet, I swear I can still hear them. That laugh. Too many mouths. One voice. Mine. But something changed in me. Something I hadn't expected. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. They didn't win. I broke the loop. I refused the drink. I left the chair empty. I remembered. That was the key. That's what Glenridge feeds on. Those who forget who they are. Those who lose themselves in the laughter. But I didn't. And because of that, I was finally free. One night, months later, I received a package. No return address. Just a small wooden box wrapped in black cloth. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single item. The ivory invitation card. Same handwriting, same words. Dinner. 8 p.m. Unit 5D. I stared at it for a long time. Then I burned it. And as the flame consumed the last edge of the paper, I heard something far off. An echo from another world. Amelia's voice, soft and distant, sighing. You would have made a lovely host. But I wasn't theirs anymore. I never would be. Epilogue. I now volunteer with housing advocates, helping women like me get out of leases they're too scared to walk away from. Places they say feel wrong, unsettling. Apartments that whisper. I believe them. I believe all of them. And if someone tells me they hear laughter in the walls, I don't tell them it's their imagination. I tell them to run. Because I did once too. And I'm still here. Alive. Smiling. But this time, it's my own smile.